That's confidence.
So which do you like both verses, the words of them, or if you like the words, I'd read both.
I think you need to get to cousin once removed.
That was the first issue. That was the second issue. Those who don't learn from history, or what is it?
Doomed to repeat it.
Maybe we should study our history here.
What's the history?
Audio, video history.
Oh, the button.
Could be yours now. What am I looking for?
Clean water.
Well, now here's the funny thing, folks. We've got a pre-taped prelude.
Yes.
Then we go live camera just for a day. And then I have to go back to a pre-recorded whoever you are. So we're actually going to put the cameras on only for the day. Does that sound right?
No. The camera will be continuous. The sound will switch.
No, the prelude
Yeah.
is a video.
Prelude is a video. Then we go live for the ringing of the bell.
And then opening music.
Opening music, only the music, but the camera is
Oh,
So when the opening music is playing, I'm going to come over here slowly and smoothly and then discuss it.
okay.
And then we're going to go back over to welcome and announcements, which will be Reverend Tim.
Okay. So when my opening music stops,
Then we hit Rob.
then I have to.
This is simply backup if we need it.
Okay.
3.
That's what I did.
Then they're going to covenant. Then the congregational sing.
Mm.
That answer's not going to work for me. So,
Right.
you know, I just listening. So
Still on camera 1, Reverend Tim. Then I'm going to go camera 1 over to Robin. Then I'm going to go camera 3.
What are we going to go before this song?
And the covenant, we're going to put it on there.
Yes, they will point and you will ring.
Okay.
And a video of Gloria doing the story.
Okay.
Then we're going to go to Melissa. During the story, I'm going to set up on Melissa.
Okay.
And then he'll tell us when she's going to start.
Oh, I give,
So then when the story is almost done.
10 seconds.
Oh, okay.
And then we go, after Lissa, we go over to meditation, contemplation, and prayer, and that's on Reverend Tim.
But since our Christian ethics professor said it's okay to shift.
And that's live, right? You don't ever go into that. So for the minute of silence, I'll go to Eagle. And then the video for the Spirit of Life.
Appeal Steve. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
10-second warning after before.
David, batteries, please.
What's that?
Batteries. This
Okay.
is red. Yeah.
Here, let me. Oh, yeah.
Here.
Yeah, Story, Melissa, then Tim, doing meditation, contemplation, and prayer, right?
Then a minute of silence.
And he needs us to do a minute of silence.
Two.
And then after we extinguish this flame, if you guys will just hit the video button for the.
We're there. We're there. All right.
Yes, I think so. Are you doing this all by yourself?
No, Rosalind's here to help me. I was over her. Yeah, it's gonna be really choppy this week. I'm gonna do my best, but.
Don't get back too far.
My neighbor said the only thing that worked for him was
I will call that reading.
I would say because there's like only one camera for the most part, that transitions between like speakers and like things can, if you just breathe for a minute, you know, like don't just like rush in, so that I can get the camera over to whoever it is.
Oh, okay.
Like, you know, ring the bell, take a breath. You know, make this a very zen service today, and
Oh, good. I like that.
that's my thought. If people feel differently and they want to just cram it all together really fast, that's fine too. I'm okay with that. I just feel like it would be better if it was.
Unless you want to just say, Krista, look.
Yeah.
YouTube, we hit streaming. Is it easy on here though to say streaming? Oh, is it?
Mm. Melissa, yeah, I see. Never mind. I was just making, I didn't see a flame. I wanted to be sure you had a candle lit. Cool. Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Church of Toledo. I'm Reverend T.K. Barger. I'm the senior minister of this congregation, and I welcome you today. This is one of our July services in which we are lay-led, so I am taking a side seat for Colette Cordova to be the service leader to speak about belonging. We also have Robin Stone and Melissa Jeter participating today. So we welcome you to our congregation. I want to let you know that our building has reopened, but the Sunday plans have not changed yet. If your group wants to make reservations to meet on our grounds or outside or even indoors, please contact the church office and we can give you details about protocols and that type of thing. The office hours are now Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 10:30 to 2:30. We especially invite you to upcoming public services. August 15th will be a backyard service where we will celebrate Toledo Pride. And our speaker will be Pride's executive director, Lexi Heyman Staples, who is what we call a child of this congregation, although Lexi has her own children now. So please tune in for that. We'll have another outdoor service on September 5th, which is Labor Day weekend. And then on September 12th, we plan to return to public indoor services with our in-gathering. Our topic will be quintessence, the mysterious, mystical fifth element this year. And we would invite you to join us. I do want you to know that we are monitoring the changing nature of COVID-19 in our area. And though decisions could be altered, our current plan is to move forward with greater access here. And now I also want to give you an update on my own health. Tomorrow I will begin a series of radiation treatments which will last 5 days a week for 5 weeks to address the recurrence of my multiple myeloma. I will start chemotherapy after that, which with some adjustments is now going to be pill-based with injections. And because I am now immunocompromised, I will be wearing a mask most of the time. So that's a struggle today for me to get used to it. My glasses are a little bit fogged up and I'm struggling to see my teleprompter today. But with that, I'm not asking you to alter your own level of precaution other than recognizing the vulnerability of others and respecting them. And if you haven't been vaccinated, I hope the evidence is now showing you that the vaccine is the way to go. As some of the, as I understand it, the vaccinations work better right now than having been exposed to the disease and having antibodies. The vaccination is that much stronger from my reading. So please do observe that. I have been told that my radiation will not affect others, that I can still speak with children, for example, if they will speak to me. And I do expect for us to have some normal interactions as we can. And I certainly appreciate your looking out for me and helping the minister to be a minister even when I'm going through this. With all of that said, once again, welcome. The Toledo Unitarians welcome you, And let us start the service proper with our opening words coming from Robin Stone.
Today's opening words come from My First White Friend, Confessions on Race, Love, and Forgiveness by Patricia Rayburn, published in 1996. God help me. I stopped hating white people on purpose about a year ago. I didn't tell anybody. I couldn't. If I did, I would have to explain how I started hating in the first place. And I really didn't know then myself. I just hated. I hated deeply and smoothly and naturally. I hated in general. I hated in specifics. I hated with a pure assurance that I had a right to hate, believing, and that not to hate was in self unpure and probably unnatural too. So I hated quietly and politely and pleasantly, and I smiled a lot. That is my style, smiling. Stop hating white people. White people, that relentless, heavy presence, never benign, never innocent. I knew stories. I heard them at the knees of people I loved, in the presence of the people I trusted. Terrible stories, horror stories. White people murdered Emmett Till and Mac Charles Parker and Medgar Evers and Herbert Lee and the 4 little girls in Birmingham Church. And white people had acquitted the guilty. Quietly, I hate it, with the silence that too many of us hide behind nice smiles, that expression of oppression, that grin of powerlessness.
And as Melissa lights our chalice, I have these words from Widening the Circle of Concern, the Commission on Institutional Change of the Unitarian Universalist Association. These are findings related to the Southern Regional Lead hiring decision from spring 2017. We begin with the premise in all our work that the values of Unitarian Universalism cannot be realized in a system that is centered around one cultural expression. In fact, the centering of white culture and values has stymied the development of a full range of cultural expressions. In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, 2 pillar principles invite us to covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people and to acknowledge the interdependent web of existence of which we are all a part. Systems, policies, practices, and expressions of Unitarian Universalism that bias one racial or cultural group above others make a mockery of these 2 core values. And so we are called into efforts to name and change them as acts of witness to a fuller and more authentic expression of this faith. And I invite you to join me in reciting the covenant of our congregation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And now it's time for our congregational singing. This is number 107, We Are a Gentle...
We are gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. justice-seeking people, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for our lives.
Good morning. Happy Sunday. This is Soroya King, and I have the pleasure and the undue honor of doing the story today. Our story is Rivers, written by Christopher Weiss. He is a Unitarian Universalist minister, and it's been adapted today for our use. Once upon a time, there were two rivers flowing side by side. Both rivers liked to argue about who was the best. "The water in my river is better than the water in your river," said one. "No, the water in my river is better than the water in your river," said the other. The two rivers would flow along all day, arguing about which river was the best. Both were quite sure they were the greatest. "Doesn't my water make a joyful sound as it runs over the smooth, polished pebbles on my bottom? And look at the way the sun reflects off the ripples and eddies that form around my granite boulders at my edge. These things are so beautiful. Surely I am the best river," said the first. The other river replied, but look at all the fish that swim in my clear, cool water. And have you heard the frogs singing at night? They live in the reeds and lilies that grow at my banks. I am home to so many wonderful creatures. Surely I must be the very best river." The two continued to argue until one day something strange and unexpected happened. The rivers rounded a bend, slid down a small falls, and suddenly saw that they were flowing towards something much bigger and greater than themselves. Up ahead were big, crashing waves, and water everywhere as far as they could see. They continued to rush faster and faster until the water from both rivers churned together into the vast and enormous ocean. Then a sound came from the sky. It came from a cloud that chuckled for a moment and then said, "Now you see how foolish you have been about arguing who is the best. There is no highest or lowest. There is no greatest or least. All things are one, and all are joined together like rivers in the sea. Ancient stories for modern times. It's been my pleasure to read the story today. Take good care and see you soon.
Somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on for far too long. Oh, it's gone on for far too long. You know it's gone on for far too long. Somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on for far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. You know, somebody's hurting my sister, and it's gone on for far too long. Oh, it's gone on for far too long. You know it's gone on for far too long. Somebody's hurting my sister, and it's gone on for far too long. And we won't be silent anymore.
We won't be silent anymore. Please join me for a time of meditation, contemplation, and prayer. There is so much going on, isn't there? With race, with culture, with the state of the world, and yes, with health as well. Our reading today is from The Color of Light, Meditations for All of Us Living with AIDS by Perry Tilleris. This was from 1988. And yes, we are still living with AIDS, as well as so much more. When we think of COVID-19 today, we think of our own health concerns. AIDS is still among us and is still of concern. And research is doing great. Here's the reading. Sadness is related to the opening of your heart. If you allow yourself to feel sad, especially if you can cry, you find that your heart opens more and and you can feel more love. Many of us have gone to extremes to prevent ourselves from feeling anything. We've used alcohol and other drugs, sex, other people, food excitement, all to avoid our feelings. Our logical mind may think sadness is a waste of time. Logical minds can be shaming and criticizing of all our emotions. That's why it's helpful to set logical mind aside and let heart take control. With the guidance of our heart, we can create a safe place for our feelings to surface. We can give ourselves time to feel. We can coax our sadness out and let it rise up for expression. When we express our sadness, we learn that it isn't the opposite of happiness. Sadness is simply another feeling, and we are most happy when we are able to freely express all our feelings. I give myself time to cry and express my sadness. I embrace my humanness. Let's observe 1 minute of silence.
Spirit of life, come to me, sing in my heart all the strength of compassion, rise in the sea. Giving light the shade of justice, rose only rose, wings.
Reverend Lily Cuervo, UU minister, wrote from the book Centering and Navigating Race, Authenticity, and Power in Ministry. She said, ever since I came to the United States from Colombia, I have tried to understand the dissonance between my ideas about myself and my ideas about this, my adopted country. And what my experience has been, I learned through the years that everyone born living south of the Rio Grande is considered a person of color and therefore inferior. I learned that Americans believe the myth of their manifest destiny and that we are part of what the white man's burden. I learned that whenever the economy is booming, the need for cheap and slave labor increased and the Latinxes are enticed to come to work here. Yet when the economic tide turns, they are made scapegoats for the ills of the economy. I learned that until recently, except for migrant workers, the Latinx population has been the invisible minority. What is it that makes us feel that we belong? What makes us feel at home, safe? Surely familiar surroundings with routines and customs and food that take us back to our childhood, our crib language, our mother's perfect potato salad, our grandmother's sweet potato pie, our bubby's Kugel, cinnamon toast, or corn on the cob with cheese. One of my first realizations that I was different from others, meaning white Americans, was when I was in college at Bowling Green State University in the cafeteria line, and corn on the cob was on the menu. I asked for cottage cheese to go with it. They all looked at me like I was crazy, as they did not serve it with cottage cheese. We always ate cottage cheese on our corn, so I assumed that everyone in Perrysburg did too. Well, they did not. It seems it is an Ecuadorian tradition to eat white farmer cheese with corn on the cob, and since we couldn't find that, we used cottage cheese instead. The next thing that happened to me at Bowling Green was on Parents' Weekend, and my parents were in my dormitory, and the RA on my floor asked me what tribe my dad was from. I said, tribe? He's Latin from Ecuador. I was really shocked by her statement. It wasn't until years later that my dad told me he was mestizo, which is part Spaniard and part Native American. In our case, Inca roots. He told me that because of racism, his surname was Spanish instead of from Quechua, the native language, that is still used by the Otavaleños and other natives in Latin America through the Andes Mountains. Dancing and music and artistic expression is a huge part of Latin culture. My cousins in Ecuador taught me to dance at age 13 when I was visiting my family. A party isn't a party without dancing, so when I would go to a party at a white person's home and there was no dancing, it seemed quite dull indeed, and many times there was not even any music. On my 18th birthday party, we had a stereo out on the patio in Perrysburg playing Latin music, and my dad was teaching me the paso doble, the two-step. Soon the police arrived, saying the neighbor had complained. My favorite dance was the cumbia. I learned that in Bogota, Colombia, while doing my student teaching. My last trip to Ecuador, from my hotel room, I could see bands down below, people dancing in the streets, so lively. But this is frowned upon in white culture, which by comparison can feel quite insipid and reserved compared to expressive Latins. I, of course, did not feel the discrimination due to the color of my skin like my dad. I was not the primary victim of racism, but the secondary. Most people ask me if my husband is Mexican because of my Spanish surname I kept, and are surprised to find out that I'm a Latina. Even though I embraced my father's culture, my mother's was dominant in my home. How could it not be, given we live here? She was German English, and her grandfather was a Methodist minister who gave sermons in Northwest Ohio in both German and English. She grew up in a stiff upper lip environment and always thought I was too sensitive if I expressed any emotions. I always identified with my dad. He allowed feelings and was fun, and we were both thinkers. Feelings were not a bad thing to be kept in secret, like in the white world, by comparison in our stay calm and carry on culture, which felt so shaming to me. So at the age of 18, I went to live in Ecuador for the rest of my life. I was going to study music, the piano, but as luck would have it, the conservatory did not have any pianos left, so I studied music instead at the discotecas and, of course, danced. I worked part-time as a cashier at my sister-in-law's cafeteria in the hospital and took 2 buses to get there, and had a Spanish-English dictionary under the counter, as we did not speak Spanish at home, although I had 3 years in high school. I left Ecuador after my visa ran out and my money. I was torn on my decision. I was seen as a gringa in Ecuador and passed in the U.S. for white. People who grew up in 2 cultures never go to the center of either culture. But the dominant culture takes over. When I speak Spanish to my Latin friends and cousins, and my Latin side is full-blown, there's a longing for Latin culture when I'm here. It does go dormant, but it leaves an emptiness and feeling of not being totally understood and a lost self, like many other people of color or immigrants who have assimilated. So our challenge as a society is to remove the white dominant culture as the yardstick equated to normal. It is just one way of being. Just like white bread is one kind of bread and rye bread is another and whole wheat another. This is a complicated issue, making others feel at home, that they are not our guests, but have equal stature and given leadership roles and not marginalized, asked to speak first at meetings so they do not to be listened to, so people of color do not feel like they are at the children's table when they are on our boards. By widening our circle, we can begin to make more strides to move beyond diversity, to inclusion and equity. And 25 years ago, the Unitarian Universalists voted to be anti-racist at General Assembly, yet there is still more work to be done. We need to change it from a social justice project for a few people and move it to the center. We are naming it. There is power in naming it. This is our quest going forward as a liberal religion, to be leaders, learning to dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions, including our own churches. Both action and inaction will have implications. Let's move forward, making progress so everyone can feel that they belong and can be their authentic self.
Thank you, Colette. And now, yes, it's offering time. Even though we are separated and in cyberspace, we still ask that you give. You can go to our website, uutoledo.org, and click on Give and follow the prompts for that to give electronically. Or you could do it the old-fashioned way and send us a check in the mail to 3205 Glendale Avenue, Toledo, Ohio, 43614. Coming soon, our announcements for next week. The 10 a.m. Spiritual Adventures Forum will be back. The topic is Mutual Aid Toledo, and it will be presented by Sierra Webb. I believe Jenny Washing will be the host. And I also want to urge you to stay tuned for coming soon and Spiritual Adventures Forum. We are making plans to change the starting time to 9:45 instead of 10 o'clock. In one aspect, that gives us a full hour for our adult religious education component, but we might still limit it to 45 minutes so that you might be able to tune in from home, and then when that is over, you can jump in your car and safely drive to church for our 11 a.m. service once we get back in person on September 12th. So do follow that, please. Next week's 11 a.m. service, I will be preaching again. I will do the August series that I've done, which are kind of unusual in content, not the standard Sunday religious messages. This one is going to be titled Me and Social Media. And of course, you're invited after today's service to join us by Zoom for coffee hour. The Zoom login information should be on the YouTube description. So follow that to join Zoom and engage in a discussion about Colette's sermon today. And now I turn to Robin for closing words.
Some days I want to turn back, most days, because to practice forgiveness, I will first have to forgive myself, then my family, then my history, then I'll have to forgive white people for being white, and myself for being black, and forgive people who don't think they need forgiving, who'll censure me for daring to believe I have the power to forgive them, and that they need to be absolved. I'll have to defend myself to people who view forgiveness as a cowardly expression to horrific infractions. But those are small viewpoints. The larger one is more dangerous. It's the most provocative possibility for a racial scenario, that a person of one race can find a way to love a person of another.
And as Melissa sends the flame into the world, I have these words from Dr. Cornel West when he gave the Ware lecture at Unitarian Universalist Association General Assembly in 2015. Dr. West said, "I just want to be personal tonight because I come from a black people for 400 years, terrorized, traumatized, stigmatized. But the best of our tradition is what? Generating the love supreme of a John Coltrane, the love ethic of a Martin Luther King Jr., the love sensibility of a Frederick Douglass and an Ida B. Wells Barnett, and in the music of a Stevie Wonder. What is it about these people that in the face of being terrorized, they continuously dish the love? That's partly what Charleston is all about. Those folks don't come from the sky. They come out of a tradition, fundamentally committed to love in the end, no matter what the situation is."